Okay. And we're joined by Paul Pope, and we also have Mary Walsh with us. Hi, Mary.
I'm gonna work my way. Mary's
Hi,
muted. I'm gonna work my way into another room because I'm torturing people here.
where are you,
Uh,
Paul?
yes,
Where are
we're,
you?
we're on set.
Oh, yes. Oh, okay.
We're shooting today.
Yeah.
So
You're
because we
shooting
didn't know that
everything.
when
It's like a disease or something you have.
yeah. So I'm just gonna go in the AD's office because they're here behind me working. She's planning what tomorrow will look like, making up the call sheet, and okay, so let's go.
So, okay, well, Mary, you're an actress and a comedian. Do you have any general advice for our students now that they are going to start? They're going to do their first film for many of them. Like, what should they prepare for?
I don't have any that kind of advice because we've always had to, because we're from such a small place. We've always had to produce our own work, direct our own work, write our own work. And that's worked out for many of us. Like, Rick Mercer was just, you had Rick Mercer just on, Andrew Younghusband, Johnny Harris, a big load of people. And that's what we did. We came in, we came up and we did it all. So, I mean, things have gone of distance now, but I still think that that's the best way. And in fact, I would suggest to anyone, if they really want to have any kind of national presence, to start a comedy troupe right now, because that's that's how everybody did it. Mark Critch had a comedy troupe. Rick Mercer had a comedy troupe. Kodko had a comedy troupe. It seems to be the way to go. But Paul had a whole different experience than me. He kind of came in as a director and but a writer too, right, Paul?
Producing mostly, I eventually figured out that I was better at organizing. I had to find my own spot. I started in camera.
Mm. So, Paul, what would you advise for people now with the camera in hand? What should they be focused on? What should they be keep in mind at the back of their heads holding that camera?
Well, I was thinking, like, I think the essence of the business is fake it until you make it. Because just a second, can you ask them to give it a little down out there, close the door? I'm going to tell a story. The first time I was on set with Mary Walsh would have been back in 1970 something, and I think I was operating the camera. Mary was acting in it. We had a director. It was a short film. The crew was about 5 or 6 people, and I remember I turned to Mary and I said, "Do you have any idea what we're doing?" And she turned back to me and we said, like, no. And we went, okay. And we just did the shrug, my famous shrug. Okay. And we kept going. Like, it was like, you can make a film by yourself. It's good to have a couple of people, and because it's a great kind of it's a group sport, but by no means do you need to actually know what you're doing. Like, that's just not true. Like, you can just do it. Like, I mean, it doesn't hurt to practice, like with the camera. So find where the light is good. There's a bit of technical stuff. There's a bunch of YouTube videos. You got to be, you want decent sound. People want to be able to hear the lines. So, like, pick quiet locations, and kind of planning. But
And Paul said something really brilliant about 100 years ago, back before the earth hardened. He said, if you have a plan, go with the plan. Don't change the plan. You can't turn the ship around on a dime. Go with the plan, even if it's a bad plan. It's better on the morning to go with that plan and not F around with a new plan at 7 a.m. because 75 people will have to even if you only have 5 people, it means 5 people have to. And I always liked that. And it's like, I think what I got from it was you have to, believe in what you're doing. And because you could just go, well, we could do this, or we could do that, or we could do this. But if you say, well, we're going to do this, then I think that's the way to get it. Don't you, Paul? I mean, I follow.
yeah, I've kind of mellowed on that because we do. I might have been like, just, you might have been out of control, and I might just have been trying to keep you in a smaller box. But yes, excellence through flexibility. But yes, I mean, knowing what you want to do is definitely a thing. But the
But
other
there
thing
are
I
no
wanted to
bad
say,
ideas, for instance, like being in Codco, you could argue about, oh, I don't like that idea or something like that. But it's like if everybody comes together and works on it, it's going to be good because it's just going to be good. It's like, I'm sure there is a bad idea. There are bad ideas, but probably not for a film or a sketch. There's probably not a bad idea, really, as long as you commit. I think commitment is the key. Paul's not committed to this thing because he has about 10,000 things he has to do. But I think that what I was trying to say, and what I kind of got from Paul that time, was that it's commitment. And no matter what you're doing, if you're committed to it, it's gonna have all that heart and passion and commitment that you put into it, and it's going to show.
Mary, I want to ask you about that. How did you find that motivation or discipline to really keep going on something and just committing to just finishing it?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I guess I am. I'm stubborn in a way. It's both a fault and a blessing, right? As most things are, right? Because I just stick at stuff and kind of believe that something will come out of it in the end. It
Mhm.
usually has, and I guess I've been lucky if you think about it in that way, that we've stuck to it and I mean, my God, Paul is doing Hudson and Rex now, and another series and another series, and there were years that he was just barely getting by, but he stuck to it. And plus, on top of that, I just like to say about Paul that not only did he stick to it in his own work, but he helped raise money for the LSPU Hall and redo the hall so that there'd be a place for up and coming playwrights and actors to work. He also put a lot of time and energy into NIFCO, which was good for everyone, So, he stuck to the belief that he must have had when he was a young fella, that it was worth it. And it's really, I think, paying off. And in the end, it does, I think, all the time. Would you agree with me, Paul?
yeah, I mean, I said before, like the first short film I made was pretty grim. And the second one I made was less grim, but still grim, but I did get the bug. And also it was kind of interesting, like I sort of saw myself in the camera department, and then I kind of moved to the AD department, assistant director, then into producing, dabble with some writing and stuff. So it's like, I'd also encourage people to like move around, right? Like try different things.
But some people can't. I mean, look, you just imagine me in the AD department.
well, it
Can
wouldn't
you?
have lasted long.
I'd
But
be
you're a very
bossy
good
enough, but
producer.
I
You're a
wouldn't
very
be.
good producer. You're a very good
I'm a good
writer.
producer.
So
Yeah, that's right. That's true. Yeah, yeah.
Paul, do you mind telling us more about NIFCO?
the Newfoundland Independent Filmmakers Cooperative was basically started 50 years ago by my brother, the late David Pope, and Mike Jones, who's also passed away. And that was at a time when kind of most filmmaking was institutionalized. It was the CBC, it was the university, and it was the National Film Board. And there was a healthy kind of pace, but there was like a growing independent movement where people wanted to kind of weaponize the media for either causes or for outrageous humor or taking on the system. And so the Canada Council had some seed money out for artist-run kind of organizations, and NIFCO was kind of founded on three principles. Everyone get together as a cooperative, but the member would own their work completely. Like NIFCO doesn't take any ownership. If whatever NIFCO put into the film, you could leave any time. And the third one was we didn't really have any commercial considerations. So like if your film was kind of mainstream and popular and my film didn't make any sense and nobody knew what it was, they were kind of treated equally.
Mm.
And so that's been kind of that was the kind of spirit of it. And I mean, we were described as a bunch of pot smoking hippies on welfare by certain establishment executives. The only problem with now being 40 or 45 years later is that we are kind of the establishment. So that's why we need people on this call to take over.
That's awesome. I wonder for you guys, as people who produce, when you see a story, how do you know, like, how do you get that feeling of, okay, this is a good story?
Well, Dave Sullivan had his life had changed. He was going to go to Moncton and work in the head office of whatever he was working for, and then he sold his house. He broke up with his girlfriend, or his girlfriend broke up with him, and then the pandemic hit, and so he had to pivot, I guess. And so he had always wanted to live by the ocean. He thought, this is a great opportunity. I'm going to get a house. And sight unseen, he took a house by the ocean. He went to, it was fantastic. Everything he'd ever dreamed of. He got up in the morning, looking out over the Atlantic, holding on, gripping his, the handrail of his deck. And he heard a voice going, "You're up some early." And he looked down over the handrail, and there was a woman smoking quite heavily, looking up at him. And he said, "Yes, yes, I am." He said, do you live next door?" She said, "No, I lives here. I've been here 8 years." And there was a woman who was living in the basement the whole time. And he had dreams of living out by the ocean with nothing but him and the ocean during the pandemic. And he's a kind of socially awkward kind of person. And this woman who lived in the basement, she was always there every morning when he got up, no matter how early he got up, and every night when he came home. And she'd always question him about everything. "My God, you work some hard, Dave." I find people who works that hard, they're usually running from something. "What are you running from, Dave?" Like she was like one of those, like Rick Hillier always says, Newfoundlanders are not friendly, they're only nosy. But she was relentless in wanting to make this friendship. So Dave wrote these Facebook pieces about these little vignettes about him and the missus. And I saw it on Facebook, and I thought, I don't know why, but I reached out to Dave and I said, I actually was born to be the missus, and you, of course, are you. And so we wrote these scripts, and 5 TV, which is just that there was hardly any money or anything, but we had a fantastic time. And we did 6, and now we're going to do another 6. And they're, people love them because they love them the same way that I loved those little vignettes. And I don't know, there was an awkwardness to them and a freshness to them and a voice that, even though my kind of Mrs. Downstairs voice is kind of something I've been doing for quite a while, but Dave's voice was fresh and new, and I was really attracted to it. So I reached out, and that's the latest thing that I sort of found that I really, really liked. And I don't know how Paul does it, but he seems to be pretty good at it.
For me, it's kind of, first of all, it has to sort of connect with me. Like if I get the idea and it's not something I'm interested in, then it's better just to stay away from it, because you're going to spend so much time with it and so much time with the projects. Like, for instance, I'm not attracted to stuff with a lot of violence in it. It's just doesn't attract me. So if a script or a project comes like that, I'm probably going to not going to get involved. And then there's sort of the next thing is just, does it stick with you? Like, does it stay in your head? Do you think about it? Like how long does it last? And that's what I kind of feel is your like, is it a short film or is it just a scene? Like, if you just have an idea for a scene, then okay, that's a great start. But it's like, is it a story? And my favorite is, like everything is kind of 3 acts, even if it's 4 minutes long. It's like act 1, I'll show you the balls. You get to meet everybody. Act 2, I'll throw the balls in the air. There's all kinds of trouble. And then act 3, you catch them. I mean, it's kind of it, Mary, really.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
So, so if I'm really attracted to stories that 3rd act, the catch, is really fun. Like that's, it's often what I'll look for. It's like, like if someone's going to pitch me something, don't pitch me the great big opening scene. That's fantastic. Tell me what it's about. How does it end? Who's our audience?
So what advice would you give to students who want to improve their storytelling, for example?
Well, my advice would be is to keep it simple and, like don't bite off too much. Like you can do something simple. You should be able to shoot your show in a day. Like, and then you should spend a day planning it or 2 days, but I mean, really 1. And it's nice to like have it in,
Two, I say 2 because I'm just a new producer.
But I mean, there's lots of people who do them get together for a day. Like, don't be too big in your first one, and sort of concentrate on the story. Like, is it load bearing? Is it telling whatever your little story is?
That's amazing. Mary, I have a question specifically for you. What advice do you have for aspiring young actresses?
Gee whiz, I don't know because, like, I didn't really want to be an actress. I wanted to be a journalist. And I actually ended up coming up with this hour is 22 minutes where I got to pretend that I was a journalist on TV, which was just perfect for me. But, I kind of fell into acting, and I did go to theater school, which, it's not a bad thing to go to theater school. I went to Ryerson. Paul also went to Ryerson, but in a different department. I didn't really last. It was kind of boring. I probably have ADHD or something. But if you want to be an actress, I would say, it's very hard being an actress because you've got to get a very thick skin. Like as we were in our generation of actors here, we weren't waiting for someone to choose us. We were writing our own stuff. We were directing it. We were producing it. We were raising the money for it. We were doing it all. And so it wasn't like somebody was picking you. Whereas if you're auditioning all the time, and then, people are not picking you because you're good. They're picking you because you look exactly like who they think should play that part, in the thing. And so and it's totally devastating. And I don't know how regular actresses do it. I really don't, because the few times I don't audition, not because I won't, but because I just don't do that kind of work very much. But when I do audition and then I don't get the part, I'm devastated. I'm just, I just, can't believe it. I didn't get the part. I auditioned. I did a good job. Why did I get the part? But, so I find it really hard. It's a hard job, and you got to have a saddle, the skin on you as thick as a saddle to get through it. And again, it's perseverance and commitment. And like Paul said about the story, I don't audition for things you think, oh, I don't I don't even like this story. This is a stupid story, but maybe I could get a role in it. I think that that's a waste of your time. I think you should just do stuff that you love.
Mhm. And by love, you mean they produce their own things, have,
Well,
make their own.
if say okay, so just say Hudson and Rex say, and there's a role, and you really don't think, like say it's a role where the person kills two people totally unnecessarily, and then confesses totally ridiculously to Hudson and makes no sense whatsoever, but you just decide that you want to do it because you want to work with Paul. Don't do that. Don't do that. That's stupid, because you just look bad no matter how good you can act. But because there are lots of great Hudson and Rex roles. So wait for a great one. They're bound to come around to you. They're doing 10,000. So don't be doing stuff you don't like, that you're not, you think, oh, this is not that good. But don't just do it. But of course, then again, I love Paul. I loved my experience on Hudson and Rex. I got to meet everyone. So it was a good experience in many ways. So really, I don't have any advice. Just carry on.
That's awesome. Awesome. Mary, I wanted to ask you something a little bit more serious. I read that you are an advocate for mental illness. What
I'm not
do you think
for mental illness.
No, advocate
for
the
mental health. Yeah.
If you guys haven't noticed, English
It's
is
a
not
joke.
my
It's a
first
joke.
language.
We used to have this joke. Do you help crippled children? We used to call up and say, do you
Oh
help
no.
crippled children? And then we used to say, well, come over because we got a couple here. We won't mind you crippling, so that, help it. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
Well, about that, what do you think is the role in film in bringing more awareness to it?
I don't really know. That's an interesting question, isn't it? Because some, there are different. It's like, there are different levels of mental illness, aren't there? Like there are with all illnesses. Sometimes you have a cold, and sometimes you have pneumonia, and you're on the verge of death, and sometimes you have COVID. So, and it's all basically a respiratory issue, right? So mental illness exists on so many different levels. I suppose that. we were doing something with a large company, and the company somebody had applied and they'd given the money. And then it turned out that they were they went into an abusive phase because the person had a mental illness. They had, and then the company dropped them and they were horrified and stuff like that. And I don't know how, nobody would drop someone because they had something, because their respiratory issue got worse, right? Like, that if I had, I can't remember what it's called. If I had pneumonia, then I'd get the time off and people would be understanding. But there's not a lot of understanding about the different levels of mental illness and who can work in film. And I guess what I'd love to see is that we'd have a bunch of films made by people who are on that continuum, like that there'd be money available. And so we'd know more, because let's face it, we live in total ignorance. We spend the least money of any G7 country on mental health and addiction. We don't know. Doctors say, well, we're just throwing a cup of drugs at them and hoping that something will hit. We need research and development. But maybe if we put together a festival of films, we might learn something. Anyway, that's all I can think. That's what I think.
Awesome. No, thank you for that. Yeah, I agree completely. What about you, Paul? What do you think? I think for students, bringing their kind of stories into their films, their identity into the films, how would you say they should do that to bring themselves into their stories?
Well, I think every script is ultimately about your own experience and the life that you've lived, and like that's where I would go. Like it's a fiction. Like we make fiction, but they're rooted in people we know, and it's like Mary's story of the woman downstairs is exactly that, right? Like, so there's a lot of license. So picking from working from your own experiences is a really good start, but it's still a fiction. Like, the names are changed, you're going to embellish, there's composite characters. Like the character you're thinking of is actually your Uncle Billy, your sister Joan, and the guy John who irritates you from school, and you kind of wound those together. So that's, like the world is yours, and that's what you should pick from.
That's amazing. And what advice do you have for students that see themselves working in the film industry? Is there like a step-by-step, this is what you should do, or like, what should they be focusing on?
I think they should take those classes at NIFCO. What do you think, Paul?
Oh, yeah, I think they should definitely do that, but also like it is kind of like you just got to do it too. Like everybody I know who is successful in this business started with short films. And short films are great because they're like, you get them done, you learn from it, you move on to the next. Like you can't, like once you shoot your first film, you'll shoot your next film a lot better because you'll have the experience of editing it. And even if it's just simple iPhone editing, once you start editing, you'll go, oh, I didn't get that shot. I didn't get that shot. Don't have my coverage. I need a close-up, right? So then the next one you shoot, you solve that problem. And then you go, oh, the sets aren't very good. Like there's the props suck, and like, so you sort of you evolve yourself as you're just trying to make it better. Like there's no shortcut. Like you don't just take a course and make a big popular show, but you will see.
No, the first film I made actually cost $4 million, and it was a complete flop. And then I didn't make another film for 12 years or 14 years. And Paul's quite right. I mean, I just went in, I'd been in the business a long time, but I hadn't made that short film. I hadn't edited it together. I didn't know, I didn't get my coverage here. I just went in kind of blind. Sometimes people let you do that if you're on a popular show, and they'll say, well, here's $4 million, go make a movie. And which, was some of it was fun, but it was terribly traumatic in the end because I knew that I wasn't prepared. So then I had to get back on the horse again and make a little tiny film, which I did this spring, and then, directed the Mrs. Downstairs and stuff like that. So I couldn't agree more with Paul, though sometimes you can take the leap off, but then it never works out well.
How did you handle that? I mean, that must have been very emotional.
Oh God, no, I didn't direct. That was in 2006, I guess. And I didn't direct anything again until this year, 2021. So it was like 17 years. I just didn't want to, I don't have, I have that thing where I suppress my feelings anyway until they explode. So I didn't, I just kept, and then as I started to shoot the Dad in the Fridge Box, I realized that I had been, that I was really scared, and that I was really taking a big step, even though it was only a very tiny, tiny little 9-minute film. And, but it was great. And I must say, I kind of wish I'd done that a little bit earlier, maybe.
And what did eventually kind of made you go, okay, I have to do this again. I can't wait any
What
longer.
made me do that? I think the only thing that made me do that was the pandemic. And if I had been, if things had been working the way they had before the pandemic for me, I would have been off on the road doing shows and stuff like that, and being in other people's things. But because of the pandemic, I had the time, and I had wanted to do. Agnes Walsh wrote this wonderful poem called "Dad in the Fridge Box" in her book. Hanging around with bachelors, or going around with bachelors. And I'd written a script ages and ages ago, and I always wanted to do it. And then the pandemic was, like I was home. So, I got the money together, and we did it. Yeah.
That's awesome.
The pandemic was really good to me.
Well, and
well, Paul worked all the way through the pandemic. I think it was really good for you too, wasn't it, Paul? Because Newfoundland was fairly rotted out with the plague.
I would have preferred no pandemic.
Yes, of course, me too. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not a complete monster. I'm just saying that there were things that came with it that made some things, easier to do. I would have preferred, yes. My God, yes.
No, we shot 2 seasons without it and 2 seasons with it, and now it's like it just seems like that's what it is. So,
Awesome. So for kind of closing in, what advice would you give, kind of general advice, so something the students could keep in mind as they go and gonna shoot their film? Any last comments?
Mine will be have fun. Like, it's got to be fun. And I am still having fun. So that's my advice.
What about you, Mary?
We always have fun, for sure. We didn't, but I would say my advice would be get a crowd. Like Paul had someone that he worked with first when he came back. I forget her name now.
Francine.
Yes, Francine. He worked very closely with Francine. I always worked with, we worked with Mike Jones because he was Andy Jones and Kathy Jones's brother, right? And Paul and the crowd. And you feel, if you can get a crowd that you work well with, it's just, it's great. It really makes life so much easier. Like I just doing the Mrs. Lynn Andrews was the production manager. I've worked with Lynn Andrews for about, I don't know how long, but it was just so great to have her. And then I often call Paul up and go, this is a problem I'm having, Paul. And he will tell me, this sounds like, do this, or don't do that, or that sounds like, and so it's like having people, establishing relationships with people that you can then, go on with for the rest of your life, kind of. That's, and you don't have to stick with them all, but, establishing good relationships, having a crowd of people who you like generally. And we didn't, like, say, for instance, when I was ambushing politicians in Ottawa as Marg Delahunty, people would say that was so much fun. It wasn't any fun at all. It was just like I was eating my own liver every single time. But I had a crowd who really supported me and who I supported, and we were, again, the crowd thing for me.
Thank you, Mary, and thank you, Paul. Thank you both.
Good.
And yeah, and with that, I want to thank all our students who've been here. I want to wish you all a lot of luck, and hopefully you're gonna start working on your scripts, on everything. And we will be back tomorrow at the same hour at 7 p.m. We're gonna have a new panel, and it's gonna be super interesting, super fun. And again, thank you.
Okay, thank
Thank
you
you.
very much. Thank you, Paul. Good to see you.
Thank you,
Take
Mary.
care. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.